Thank you for joining the webinar. And before we go to the program as such, I give the floor to Thomas Rossmüller, and he will explain the house rules and technology of we are going to use today. Thomas, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anu. Um, Dear attendees, thank you very much for joining our side event. Just some brief information on the session. We will record this webinar, and in the next weeks, we'll make it available on our Evil SDGs website and on YouTube, so you can watch the recording there. For this webinar, we will also have French and Spanish simultaneous interpretation. So to listen to the interpretation, please locate the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. And if you click on it, you will see the options English, French, and Spanish. Please just choose the language that you want to follow the webinar in. If it's English, select that. That will also enable you to listen to the English interpretation of the Spanish interventions. You will be muted during the event, and for the Q&A sessions, please post your comments and questions to the panelists in the chat. You can do so by locating the chat icon in your Zoom window and then just type in your message, and the panelists will be able to read it and answer all your questions and comments later on in the Q&A session. All right, thank you. That's for me. Back to you, Anu.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So I'm Anu Saksen. I'm the head of the evaluation unit of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. So on behalf of the organizers, Ministry of Foreign Affairs Finland, DEVAL from Germany, IIED, UNICEF, and EVAL partners, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this event. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Once again, thank you for joining the webinar. So it's the great opportunity to share our experience and lessons learned in country-led evaluations with you. The aim of the SDG evaluation capacity building effort is to support country-led evaluations by providing the participants with approaches that suit the country's own national planning needs, systems and capacities, as well as national political contexts. So very happy to see so many participants joining us today. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, 169 targets. It's an ambitious agenda. And it's less than 10 years to go. And I think all countries are now struggling how to make progress towards achieving the 2030 agenda and how to accelerate their efforts, especially now during the pandemic, in such a period of economic, social, and humanitarian crisis. So the purpose of this event is to provide you with some hints and ideas how to achieve the set goals. As the title of this event already indicates, we strongly believe that evaluation is a good tool, a path to take to advance the Agenda 2030. So we will try to demonstrate how evaluation contributes achieving the SDGs. Evaluation is crucial in assessing where we stand with national SDG related policies, plans, and results. Evaluation can also generate recommendations on how, in what direction, and how fast to drive change to achieve the SDGs. So this event follows a series of different SDG evaluation capacity building events taking place since 2019 when we first time met in an international retreat in Helsinki. Now we have much more experience to share with you, some successes, but unfortunately some challenges as well. Since the successful retreat in Helsinki, the same group of evaluation institutes as hosting this event today have prepared a guidebook on evaluating the SDGs. The guidebook has been presented and discussed in many international conferences, events, training seminars, and etc. So we have also launched capacity building and learning webinars, helping national commissioners practitioners to plan, resource, and implement SDG evaluations. Today, we will hear 3 cases of country-led evaluations from Costa Rica, Finland, and Nigeria. So they will try to respond to questions like how evaluation can play a key role in achieving SDGs. How was the evaluation used in the political and development decision-making circles? How are evaluation results and recommendations taken up by political process? So what are the main lessons learned? So our speakers today would like to share the key messages with you. Today, as you have seen the program, we have Dr. Jörg Faust giving the keynote speak. Then we have a panel represented by Costa Rica, Nigeria, Finland. We have Her Excellency the Minister Pilar Garrido. We have a High Commissioner from Nigeria, Bala Yusuf Yunusa, and Secretary General of National Commission of Sustainable Development, Mr. Sami Pirkkala from Finland. Qasem El Sadiq will moderate that session. Thereafter, we have a synthesis given by Stefano Enrico, and then closing remarks by Denis Jabin from UNICEF. I would like to introduce briefly Dr. Jörg Faust, who is going to give the keynote speak. So Dr. Jörg Faust is a director for German Institute for Development Evaluation, DIVAL. He is also professor of political science at the University of Duisburg-Essen. So Dr. Faust is also vice chair of the OECD DAC Network on Development Evaluation, EVALNet, and the member of the Scientific Advisory Board for the Bertelsmann Transformation Index, BTI. He has numerous scientific and practice-oriented publications in national and international publication formats. Jörg, the floor is yours. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for this kind introduction, Anu. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted to speak here at this side event of the HLPF, and I would, in this context, like to express my gratitude to Finland, particularly for making this possible. As I see it, the objective of this side event is to show successful and practical examples on how SDG evaluations can be done and can be used for making better and more sustainable policies, thereby motivating others to initiate similar process, starting a fruitful diffusion process, to say so. And I think those, or I guess most of us who assist this panel today, working inside the community of promoting the SDGs and evaluation, we are probably convinced that we need a solid evidence base in order to know where we stand with regard to the SDGs, with regard to our achievements and with regard to our failures. And only with a continuously updated and solid evidence base, we are able to position ourselves and from there on develop fruitful strategies and implementation steps, particularly in the SDG environment, which is not only complex and urgent, but also in a permanent need of prioritization at the same time. So in such a setting, independent evaluation can provide a powerful tool or instrument with 2 basic functions, namely learning and accountability. Because evaluation is geared towards the creation of practical, relevant knowledge, it is somehow a very applied form of research. And because of its direct link to practical implementation of public policies, the generated knowledge through evaluation is suitable for immediate learning processes, but also for a constructive way of accountability provision. The latter, because evaluation does not only identify failures and shortcomings, but also, if done well, provides us with concrete and usable recommendations that can be translated into operative work. So given this powerful instrument for speeding our journey towards sustainable development, why do we often, or at least sometimes, complain about the lack of evaluation, its shortcomings, and sometimes only timid demands from policymakers for independent and critically constructive evaluation? From my perspective, there are three major barriers. First, there is a political challenge in a time where the SDGs and the potential role of development cooperation are contested from two political extremes that are strong on value-based arguments, but weak on evidence. In a polarized debate, enlightened development cooperation sustained by evidence-based policymaking is challenged by self-referential and often radicalized debates, be they nationalistic or extremely post-colonial in nature. In such a polarized debate, which we observe, unfortunately, in many countries, an open and enlightened learning culture, which is the fertile ground for independent evaluation, is difficult to achieve. The appetite for evaluation is diminished, and the usage of evidence easily becomes instrumentalized by short-term political motives. The second barrier is an institutional barrier, where evaluation often is embedded in a fragmented context at the international and national level. Many times, the evaluation architecture is still dispersed, sometimes even fragmented, and we need to move into a more coherent evaluation architecture, which does not necessarily has to lead into one evaluation system, but rather into a system where the interfaces between data creation, monitoring, audit, and evaluation units and implementation is organized in a complementary, but at the same time, more coherent way. Needless to say that this will require some investment into evaluation capacity development, and it also will need more resources for data creation and evaluation. The third barrier is a conceptual one and related to the complexity of the Agenda 2030. From an evaluator's, and probably also from an implementing perspective too, we are constantly torn between demand to take a complexity lens, while at the same time analyzing concrete programs and steps, which hereafter should culminate into very practical recommendations. In this regard, there are two knowledge gaps which ideally should be tackled by an iterative and somehow cascading process of evaluation. On the one hand, we know that the SDGs relate to each other and that there are sometimes synergies, but also negative externalities, and that we should have a better understanding on how particular measures or programs impact on different goals. So it is necessary to take at least a partly systemic and therefore complex perspective with the instrument of evaluation. At the same time, however, we cannot stay at a very abstract and complex level. We need concrete, rigorous methods and design to identify priorities and posteriorities regarding the SDGs in particular contexts. And we need to very concretely identify causal effects of our interventions, strategies, programs, and projects. Thus, Usable knowledge created by evaluation needs to address systemic issues, pressing questions of prioritization in a world of limited resources, and also very concrete knowledge on causal effects of concrete interventions. So overall, we find a certain paradox. On the one hand, enlightened policymaking, evidence-based policymaking, and implementation oriented towards sustainable development is in need of independent and practically relevant evidence created through evaluation. At the same time, we do observe major challenges for effectively promoting the evaluation agenda. We find sometimes a shortage of political capital to invest into evaluation. We find a shortage of institutional capacity and personal capacity. And we also find a shortage of resources. Now, do I have solutions for those barriers and challenges? Well, fortunately, I can mainly delegate this difficult part of the job to the presenters of this panel, who are the pioneers, who are pioneering the evaluative avenue towards useful S2G evaluation. The example which they will provide, and this panel itself, however, show an incremental process towards progress. We have started now with very concrete and successful evaluation initiatives. And we are beginning to feed those single cases, those best practices back into a more general debate. Be it through this discussion at forums like the HLPF, or be it through the creation of the already mentioned evaluation guidebook, other guidelines, which help to embed evaluation better in national policy context, or be it through increasing measures of evaluation capacity development. And particularly with regard to the latter, we should definitely invest more in evaluation capacity building at home in donor countries, but also abroad. And here particularly, donor agencies can have an important role in strengthening national evaluation systems and promoting triangular and South-South cooperation in this area, which then would foster a more legitimately and probably also more effective public sector. And in this regard, I think our small DEVAL ECD project, with its systemic perspective on strengthening policies, the public sector, civil society, and evaluation professionals in the area of evaluation, has shown some positive effect, mainly through highly engaged partners in Latin America and in particular in Costa Rica. Moreover, I think the Global Evaluation Initiative by the World Bank and UNDP can, if well established, provide further impetus for ECD and for making evaluation a powerful tool, not only for strengthening learning and accountability in the public sector, and therefore good governance, but also to achieve sustainable development. And by these remarks, I close. I'm looking very much forward to your presentations, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jörg. I really appreciate your honest picture and complexity of the evaluation environment where we are living and do our job. It's very important for us. But at the same time, thank you for encouraging us, and it's good to start and progress from here. So then, as I said, I promised, and Jörg also refers, so we have a distinguished panel today, and it will be moderated by Qassem El Sadiq. Qassem is an international expert in program evaluation, and he strongly believes that evaluation matters for development. He has more than 18 years of experience in evaluation and SDGs. So he's EVAL's SDG co-chair and the founder of MENA Evaluation Network. He has contributed to various evaluation forums drafted dozens of policy reviews, and co-authored the series of EVAL SDGs IIED policy briefs, including the evaluation guidebook. And I hope you got the link on the chat. I think it was posted by Ada. But without further ado, Kassem, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anu. Thank you so much, Dr. Faust, also for the insightful address. I think I'm going to pick up a bit on that, but before that, allow me to present and the esteemed panelists around. And I'd like to probably share the screen. Thomas, would you do so, or do you want me to do it from my end?
I can do so.
Thank you so much. So I'm happy and delightful as part of this a growing partnership and solid partnership between the different partners, the EVAL, IIED, EVAL SDGs, UNICEF, IDEAS, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Finland to convene in this panel discussion to discuss the evaluation and how it helps and contribute to achieving the SDGs. I'd like to present the panelists. I think, can we do it myself? Here we go. So I'm delighted to have three distinguished panelists among us. Madame the Minister, Doña Pilar Garrido is the Minister of National Planning and Economic Policy and is the coordinator of the government economic team and the technical secretariat of the National Commission for SDGs. She represents Costa Rica before the Public Governance Committee of the OECD. Pilar holds a postgraduate degree in political science and a master's degree in economics from Trinity College of Dublin, and a specialization from UDB Dublin in international development. And she held the position of Vice Minister of National Planning for the Solis Rivera administration during the 2016-2018 period. In addition to Madame the Minister, I'm delighted also to have among us a senior technical advisor to the Nigerian government, Dr. Bala Yunusa is a senior technical advisor to the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals. And they've got a couple of hats, but in this capacity, he provided strategic policy guidance in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in Nigeria. And he was formerly a former team leader of the United Nations Millennium Village Project, among other projects, where he facilitated the adoption of the Millennium Village model at the national level in Nigeria, reaching out to 21 million people across 113 local areas there. In addition to that, I'd like to, again, I'm proud and happy as always to have Sami Perkala also among us. This is not the first time, it won't be the last time, obviously. Sami is the Secretary General of the National Commission on Sustainable Development at the Prime Minister's Office. His key responsibilities relate to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda in Finland and to the engagement of the whole of society in sustainability work. He's also one of the vice chairs of the European Sustainable Development Network, the ESDN. In 2018, Mr. Perkala led the preparation of the terms of reference for the National 2030 Agenda evaluation and acted as the chair of the steering committee during the evaluation process. From there, I'd like to probably immediately pick up on some of the discussion points that Dr. Faust has provided us. And precisely the point around the shortage in resources and capacity. And I think here part of the discussion will revolve around the capacity. And I'd like to throw the first, what we'd like to do here is to probably run 2 rounds of questions and discussions. And I'll start first addressing Madame the Minister of Costa Rica. I'd like to address Madame the Minister of Costa Rica with the following. From what we've seen, what we've heard so far on what Costa Rica has done in terms of the thematic evaluation focusing on cross-cutting issues related to biodiversity and climate change within the framework of the SDGs, I think, Dona Pilar, it would be pertinent for us to, and for you basically, to share with us what are the key benefits of having conducted such an evaluation in the context of the 2030 agenda.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to address everyone who's with us this morning to us. Well, we wanted to say that this evaluation has been very challenging. This evaluation about non-refundable cooperation on biodiversity and climate change for the period 2019 and 2020 was made possible with the support of FOSILAC, and it has been the first thematic evaluation within the National Evaluation Agenda, which represented challenges in terms of planning, management, and implementation of the evaluation process itself. Furthermore, the identification of the principles of Agenda 2030 of leaving no one behind, equality and environmental sustainability, as well as the contribution to the accomplishment of specific SDGs, allowed us to generate institutional capabilities for planning future thematic evaluations considering these action lines. The scope was very broad, which also enabled us to consider how non-refundable cooperation is being managed, as well as setting parameters for measuring its results from information that was validated in accountability and transparency exercises on the volume of resources that were mobilized for these exercises in general, and that are channeled due to these thematics to our country. In this line, many of the recommendations are applicable to our cooperation management system, which is very useful for future decisions in terms of how to manage this cooperation better. It's the first time in the region that this is done from the perspective of a country that receives cooperation, which inverts the logic of this more traditional way of analyzing cooperation from donors, but it reverses the logic to receptors of cooperation. And at the same time, to recipient countries, and this implies this turning point of the usual way in which evaluations are done. This position put us in a place of vanguard, and it helped us to improve more innovative ways and to scale them up, more innovative ways in which to adopt and establish more complex and analytical methodologies, which I believe Georg was referring to at the beginning, which on the demand on how to make more complex strategies and more complex analysis. So this helped us develop and challenged us to develop more complex methodologies and more complex instruments also for this analysis. And this evaluation process required a collaborative effort of different stakeholders related with the covered topics. Biodiversity and climate change are very broad and cross-cutting along our many institutions. And so we promoted participation and institutional coordination in the process, having also as a goal a better understanding among the participating stakeholders of the effectiveness of cooperation and what is required in order to make the most out of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam the Minister. I think it is pertinent to learn that a couple of things have emerged, and the benefits of such an evaluation has helped in unleashing and analyzing the complexity on one hand, and improving the level of collaboration among stakeholders in such a very much tight and complex issues. I mean, picking up from there, I'd like to probably call upon Bala and to learn a bit from the Nigerian experience that has embarked in a country-led evaluation of 2 of the SDGs. The process, to my understanding, to the understanding of those who are following up on that quite closely, is that it entails also a lot of, it was rigorous, the process was very much rigorous, not only in terms of the complexity that Madam the Minister has also already highlighted, but also in Nigeria, it was on the methodology and the approach. It was also on the similar to Costa Rica, on the engaging wide spectrum of the stakeholders, especially if we're talking about a huge half a continent, if I may say, in Nigeria with so many of areas and so many of people and engaging them. So from there, probably if I can ask Dr. Bala, it would be pertinent to share with us and with the webinar participants, what are the key aspects of the evaluation process followed in Nigeria? That would be my first question. And later on the second round, probably we can pick up on the findings and how you've used them in other platform, probably development and political platform.
Okay, thank you very much, Sadiq, for the opportunity. So the country-led evaluation of the priority SDGs in Nigeria is happening within the framework of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Like you are aware, Nigeria has a standalone office for the coordination of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. And part of that mandate of the office has to do with the monitoring, evaluation, documentation, and reporting. And in the wisdom of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, once the 2030 Agenda was adopted, they set up the high-level political forum as a follow-up and review mechanism. So for us, having implemented the SDGs between 2016 and 2019, we felt for us to begin to do evidence-based national and global reporting, and specifically the HLPL, we needed to begin to imbibe the culture of evaluation because we need to show evidence on our way to the 2030 deadline. Okay, so we had to establish an institutional framework at the national and at the subnational level to guarantee effective implementation. So part of the commitment is to set up a multi-stakeholder technical working group on SDG evaluation to drive the process. But more importantly, we recognize that as of 2019, when we commenced this process, there was depth of capacity in terms of evaluation capacity within the public sector. So we felt that part of this commitment to do an independent evaluation has to imbibe the capacity issue, to address the capacity of the public sector to be able to conduct evaluations of government policies and programs. Okay, so basically, although we started this process in 2019, but there is history of country-led evaluation in Nigeria. As way back in 2016, there was a birth registration program in Nigeria, and there was country-led evaluation that was supported by UNICEF, and that began to demonstrate Nigeria's capacity to conduct country-level evaluation. But within the framework of the SDGs, we have seen how commitment and political commitment can bring about country-led evaluation. So we see this process more of a political undertaking than a technocratic endeavor. And we are doing this evaluation with the purpose of learning, accountability, as well as evidence-based reporting. Okay, now, if we said for learning, that will be for policy advocacy around the 2030 agenda. So if we we'll get the key findings by the end of this year of these priority SDGs that we are evaluating with the technical and financial support of UNICEF, then we will be able to take the key findings and recommendation into our policy advocacy strategy for making all the necessary changes along the policy line to help achieve the sustainable development. But more importantly, Nigeria is committed to rendering voluntary a national review every two years. And to do that, we need to show evidence. And the only way to do this is to conduct independent evaluation that are country-led along these sectoral policies and plans that speaks to the intent and aspiration of the sectoral SDGs. And that is what we are doing at the moment, ensuring that although key findings weren't available as of last year when we presented our voluntary national review to the HLPL, which was the second one anyway, but that whole process now then reinforced the if you like, the methodology for that voluntary review, because we had to use about 48 other independent evaluation to synthesize these findings along the 7 priority reporting SDGs. So for us, this country-led evaluation of the SDGs is not only reinforcing evaluation culture in the public service, but it's also providing evidence and strengthening our policy advocacy for the 2030 agenda. I would like to stop here for the sake of time, and then we can always come back to these issues. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I can hear you very well saying and reinforcing the fact that probably Sami has a problem in hearing. Let's try now. Thomas, if you please address to that. I can hear you properly saying that the process of evaluation within the context of the SDGs is both a political and a technocratic process, and that resonates again with many of the emerging literature on the subject. Critically speaking to the complexity of the issue, you're relying also on a huge amount of independent evaluation and the synthesis or meta-synthesis of current evaluation, in addition to the efforts behind the currently processes that you're developing. I'm quite as I'm speaking, I'm looking at the chat bar and trying to make sure that Sami is on board. And just Sami, if you can hear me, just give me a sign so that I can address you the question. I think he can't. So probably I'll go with the second round until Sami fixes the technological glitches from his end, and come back to Doña Pilar, Madame the Minister. We've discussed the complexity and we've discussed the aspect pertaining to stakeholders. We've learned from Bala how the system and how the process is both political as well as developmental and technocratic. From the experience of Costa Rica and from the results and from the recommendation that were produced, how can you describe to what extent those results and recommendations were absorbed and taken up by the political processes, and how far they've contributed to the implementation of the SDGs?
Our ministry has established the use of evaluations ever since the very early stages of the evaluation process, and not just at the final stage, which considers that we have been training our technical teams from the early process, those who are participating in the evaluation process. Also, we sign a commitment with the institution on that they have to use the recommendations that are going to be established at the end of the process by the institutional authorities. This is the highest political commitment, since they are committing themselves to use the results of evaluations further and then in order to improve the planning or the management process of policy. Also, we work on sessions to identify clearly the possible use at the end of the process of these evaluations. Basically, why were you embark yourself into an evaluation process, and what are you going to use these findings for? It also fosters the use of our methodological tools, especially those that are designed specifically for the stage of use of the findings that we have had. Additionally, there is a strong dissemination of the results of the evaluation. We make them public with several on our platform on our website, but also with different stakeholders, with institutional authorities. We have sessions with them at the end of the evaluation process, with the people who were interviewed along the evaluation process, with public officials, with academia, and also with external evaluated people, among others. Our use of findings guideline has helped us to move forward from the recommendations of the evaluations to specific actions, specific policy actions to transform how the programs are being designed and managed. We want to highlight that institutions approve 90% of the recommendations of our evaluations, and they incorporate nearly 90% of those into their operational planning instruments. And also we want to point out the high commitment for using these findings. Currently, the evaluation about biodiversity and climate change cooperation, just to link with the question you asked me before, is actually in this stage. The specific actions are included as part of our institutional operational planning, and this enables budgetary allocation for complying with them and to identify responsible officials for its implementation as well as for its monitoring of the advancement of these. As an example about the SDGs contribution, evaluations have enabled to have more ownership of the 2030 agenda. But basically the principles and indicators, and also to set specific targets and indicators that go with them, as well as to improve strategic planning on public interventions to include stakeholder engagement and public value as the general orientation for public management. Under this parameter of continuous improvement. Our evaluation unit, which we're very proud of, gives an annual monitoring of the action plans of the several recommendations and action plans of the evaluations in order to measure how these recommendations are being incorporated in the different institutional management instruments and how there is compliance of the institution who asked for the evaluation, and how it is also right now part of this continuous improvement focus, and how these interventions were transformed in order to serve better the purpose of granting well-being for our citizens.
Interesting. And I mean, as you were describing this whole process and the level of assimilation and absorption of the 90% of the recommendation, it reminded me as if it's a straightforward answer to Dr. Faust earlier, saying that yes, it's a complex issue. It has been analyzed with using sometimes of innovative tools, but guess what? We would, I mean, you in Costa Rica, you were able to distill those complex issues and come up with more actionable recommendations that were immediately absorbed by the different stakeholders, and that's really fantastic. It is lesson to be learned, and it is something that we would be all interested to learn of and to explore. I don't know whether you want to highlight something in this regard, or we're satisfied at this level.
It's just one quick thing. Just wanted to say that this involvement in this assimilation process starts at the very early stage of highlighting which is going to be, or what interventions are going to be prioritized in our national evaluation agenda. And this has a very strong political commitment behind it, but also what are the priorities and what do people outside care about? What are those key interventions that are going to change the lives of people and which are key to accelerate the implementations of Agenda 2030 also. And in this particular context, evaluation is a very powerful instrument in order to help us build upon better recommendations, better evaluations, better action plans, for those evaluations, to help us recover better from the pandemic, but also to help us rebuild in a more resilient way And so evaluation is one of those powerful tools that we should set up our lens to, and our efforts, our common efforts from United Nations, from governments, from civil society, from international cooperation, like for instance, WOZELAC and others, and the DEVEL. So this is something we should set interest in.
Let me touch base with Sami and see if he's available so that we can engage him in the discussion. Sami, can you hear me?
Yes, Kasem, I'm sorry, I had some technical difficulties, but now I'm here.
Great, great.
I hope you can hear me.
Oh, definitely. So let me immediately throw the ball into your courts and let's constructively and positively challenge you with the question around the experience of Finland that has completed the evaluation of the Sustainable Development Policy almost 2 years ago and is currently planning a new one. I think it's pertinent to reflect on what triggered the decision to undertake this other round of evaluation. The question that probably always is there in the back of our mind, those who are closely following up on the experience of Finland, is how was the evaluation used in the political and development decision-making circles? We've learned from Costa Rica that it has been, the recommendation have been absorbed widely by the different public sector as well as at the level of the people. We've learned from Nigeria that the process is both political and technocratic. Let's hear the experience from your end in Finland. How was it used in both political and development circles? And if you'd like to share,
yes, thank you, Kasem.
Let us know how you can project it. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Yes, the evaluation it was conducted in 2018, and the results were ready in early 2019, as you probably know. And the Prime Minister's office was the commissioner of the evaluation, and the evaluation was done by an independent evaluation team. So how the results were used in political decision making, I can think of 3 different ways of use that I thought I would be interesting to you. Well, first one is that the evaluation was a participatory developmental evaluation. So, the evaluation team had discussions with many different ministries and personnel of the ministries, and also civil society and stakeholders during the process of the preparation of the evaluation. And I believe that one important impact of the evaluation took place already during the preparation of the evaluation. So ministries and different stakeholders started to think about the questions the evaluators made, and also started to think about their policies in the light of outcomes and results. And I believe this process of discussing these issues with the evaluators and the need to explain to someone else what are the policies you are doing in your field, in your ministry, how they support the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I think this had an important impact. So this is something that happened already during the evaluation. Then secondly, the results of the evaluation were ready 4 months before the election, the parliamentary election. And the evaluation team discussed with all political parties in the Finnish parliament about the evaluation and the results. And I believe this had some impact on the thinking of political parties before the election. And I think we can also see some of that impact now with this new parliament, and not only with the government, but also with the opposition parties, what is their understanding of the Agenda 2030 and the policies that need to take place. And then thirdly, after the election, when the government program was prepared, the results of the evaluation and the recommendations of the evaluation were at the use of the parties that were preparing the government program. So at least they are used, and of course it is then difficult to say how much of that went into the government program. But the current program of the Finnish government is very well in line with the Agenda 2030 and sustainable development. So whether that is due to the evaluation and what is the role of the evaluation for that, it's difficult to say, but the situation in any way is quite good in Finland in that sense. Sorry, Kasem, I can't hear you.
I think the voice is a bit disconnected or interrupted from your end, I think.
Okay, I can hear you now, but
I mean, from what I've heard is, again, I picked up on a couple of things, and this is very interesting to learn that the evaluation, again, building on what we've heard from Donna Pilar a while ago, that it served into the decision making at the government level. Finland is a typical example. The evaluation has influenced the elections in a way or another, but most importantly, it has shaped and it has some fingerprints on the government plans after the election, which boils to the point that it was used to a large extent by the government in shaping its policy and the plans. Let me give throw the ball again in the court of Bala and see to what extent the findings so far have been taken forward into the implementation of the national plan in Nigeria. Bala, if you allow us to ask this question, how the findings, though probably they're not fully fledged yet, but how do you anticipate influencing the national agenda and national plans?
Okay, thank you very much, Kasim. So like you know, we're just getting to get the first draft of SDG 3 evaluation. Some of the key findings are immediately being taken into consideration in the overall framework for the implementation of the SDGs. For example, as early as 2 weeks ago, when we had the first draft, we got to know that even if we spend the entire half of the budget of the Federation in health, we won't be able to make a meaningful progress. That even at current level of spending, outcomes should be better than it is. So there are other issues around cultural barriers, deeply rooted culture and traditions that are, challenging the achievement of some of the health-related targets and indicators. So, I mean, this is something that we can immediately take and run. We mustn't wait for the final report to be published before we begin to do advocacy around the line, relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. So part of our plan is to quickly learn from the key findings and the lessons and put forward recommendations for the National Steering Committee for them to provide the needed political leadership while we continue to do high-level advocacy beginning July, ending in early August, when we hope to have the full-fledged report ready, and then we can continue to do advocacy across the ministries, departments, and agencies on these key findings. So ours is a commitment. The country-led evaluation it's basically aimed to allow us learn from the process and also strengthen our evidence-based reporting, as well as advocacy for the global goals. So part of what we have learned so far is that even capacity building must be integral part of country-led evaluation process, because like I've mentioned earlier, and obviously that commitment to strengthen evidence-based reporting in our national SDG implementation roadmap, we are committed to presenting voluntary national review every two years. So you can see how these findings fit in neatly. And we also emphasize that every three years, beginning 2023, ending, we will be having independent evaluation of selected SDGs, so that by 2030 we will possibly cover half of the 17 SDGs in terms of reporting, should resources permit. So by and large, that is what I would say around this concern that you raised. Thank you.
Good to learn. I mean, this is fantastic to learn that at least there is a commitment now to for a periodic reporting, for a periodic evaluation, so that by the end of 2030, hopefully more than half of the SDGs would be evaluated or reported in Nigeria. A burning question that I'd like to pick up the mind of Sami on is the following. The second round of evaluation, for it to be planned, I mean, probably we need to think of something innovative tools or different means and the process and procedures. So in the second round, what would you consider doing differently than the first phase? Are these issues around design, methodology, engagement, participation? What is different in the second round that you recommend your team and your colleagues to focus on? Sami, can you hear me?
He's frozen.
Yeah, I think so. Fair enough. Probably until we get any reaction from Sami. I mean, yeah. I think there's this technical glitch there that's hindering. Probably let me call upon also the floor and the participants to share and to raise their.
Yes. Indeed, we updated our national.
Sami, your voice is disconnected, interrupted.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can. Yeah, go ahead. No, we can't hear you. Until Sami gets back to us online, let me also call upon our colleagues on the floor and the participants to raise their questions or their clarifications so that we can address them before providing quite a concluding remarks from our colleague from Stefano.
Kasim, would you give the floor to Anu while Sam cannot speak?
Yeah, definitely. Anu?
On here. Well, anyway, what to do differently? No.
Sami, it's been difficult to hear you. Anu, is there any other means of getting Sami's input?
Kasim,
Okay.
Sami is trying once. Okay. I think Sami is trying once again, and if it doesn't work, so he will call me, and then I will open my phone, or he will send his speaking points to me, and I can convey the same message. But
okay. Okay. So until we, I think he's now here.
Okay.
Until Sam is back, let's hear from the floor. There is always the option of you typing in the your comment or your question on the chat bar. We definitely will take them on board.
Kasim, there are two questions.
Kasim, can we try that Sami talks to the phone and then
I think it's
Sami, go
echoing.
ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Sami, go ahead. No, it doesn't work.
It
No.
doesn't work. Okay, okay. So there are two questions I think on the from the chat bar, and I would like to my colleague Ada, if you can also help me navigating through those questions. Some of them are in Spanish. So the question, one of the question is for Sami, but Sami is not here. Probably we can direct it later on to Anu. There is a question from someone on the floor saying that the and let's pick up on this question. Probably Bala or probably Donia Pilar might be able to answer this question. That has to do with the fact that some of the evaluation reports, they rely on copying and pasting and duplicating evaluation exercise due to lack of fund and sometimes intentionally. Etc. And such reports would give some defective picture leading to flawed policy making. The question is, how can this be addressed to ensure the evaluation report issued is the accurate and fair picture on the ground, bearing in mind that development partners will depend on the information presented. So I think the question revolves around the accuracy and reliability of the data and the reliability of the evaluation reports. I don't know whether there is any reflection from Donia Pilar or from Bala on such thing.
Okay, so, Kasim, can I comment?
Of course.
Okay, so we started the process actually with the appreciating the fact that there is dearth of data, lack of data that is disaggregated at the national as well as at the subnational level. So ours was to start by realigning the entire national statistical system with the requirements and indicators of the SDGs. And that will be what we will ride on, to ensure that our data is credible and timely as we move forward to track and monitor the implementation of the SDGs on an annual basis. So the independent evaluation is coming to ride on the strength of that institutional framework that we have established. I think to the best of our knowledge, we are the first African country to have successfully realigned the national statistical system. So now we have a data dictionary which contextualize the 230 key performance indicators. We know the ministries, department, and agencies that will report on which of these indicators. And we know broadly 70% of the 230 key performance indicators will come from the system of administrative statistics. That's the periodic running of the bureaucracy, ministries, department, and agencies. About 25% of the 230 indicators will come from the periodic surveys, like the Living Standard Survey, the Demographic Health Survey, the multi-indicator cluster surveys and all that. And about 5% will be computed by the National Bureau of Statistics. Okay, so this is what we are using the institutional framework we are using to deliver on the SDG evaluation and every other evaluation country-led for that matter. And that is why our commitment to having to do in every 3 to 4 years, select some SDGs across the 3 dimensions, economic, social, and environmental dimension of the SDGs, and then run an in-depth evaluation. And I mean, since no one has done independent evaluation of SDGs before, we have to learn, as we proceed. So we are challenging our assumptions. We are perfecting the methodology. In fact, how we arrived at even this priority evaluation of this priority SDGs in Nigeria, we had to be in a particular place for 1 week with the technical and financial support of UNICEF to begin to examine how can we evaluate these SDGs. We have to identify, SDGs that have deeply rooted national or sectoral policies that speaks to the intent and aspiration of these SDGs, and then the nature of programs, they are widespread, and the funding. So a lot of criteria that we came up with, to test our assumptions and methodology. So I agree data is key, and there is no two ways about it. If you don't have timely and credible data, the evaluation will just be hanging. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Bala. I think you've nailed it in terms of responding to the question with such a by devising a rigorous data and the scientific methodological rigor, developing dictionaries, as you said, and realigning statistics and making sure that the system is there. Commissioning independent evaluation is by itself one of the means and tools of doing so. And I think with your answer, you to a large extent also answered the question by our colleague Hisham Hassan, who was concerned about how we can coordinate in terms of planning for evaluation in the context of evidence gaps. And I think you nailed it again and provided a straightforward answer. Another question that is still there in the chat bar pertain to, and probably I need to address it to Donia Pilar, if you allow. Yeah.
Anu is ready for Sami's points.
Okay. So is Sami available now?
No, unfortunately, and I'm very sorry for technical problems Sami is having. But a few points he raised when you asked about what Finland could do differently from now when planning or designing the second evaluation. He says that participatory and developmental kind of evaluations is still the cornerstone of the second evaluation as well. But what he wanted to do differently is to start a little bit earlier so that the results are available earlier than last time, so before the parliamentary elections. So our elections will take place in April 2030. And in practice, the parties will start thinking about their elections program already early 22. So ideal time would be to have results ready by then. So we should start designing the evaluation already now to be ready in the beginning of next year. And then somebody raised the question that it's very costly to organize this kind of evaluation. I have to say that in Finland it costed 200,000 euros, which we think that it's not too pricey, so it was still doable and reasonable price. But then he also says that maybe we should have a better use of all sectoral evaluations that has been done by other ministries than Prime Minister's Office or Foreign Ministry and other institutions during the elections period. So these are the points he wanted to take on board. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I think they are very much pertinent, stressing on the participatory aspect in the early start and getting different sectors on board as early as possible. Thank you so much. And yeah, Sami, I mean, technically glitches happen. I'm conscious of the time, but I want to address one final question from the floor by our colleague Maria Elena. I want to address it to Donia Pilar, if you allow me. And the question has to do with Should the SDG targets and indicators be rethought considering disparities and inequalities in social groups and territories during and post the pandemic? And I think this is a very pertinent question, especially in context where some countries like Costa Rica have done such an evaluation. So what's your take, Doña Pilar, on this question?
I believe we shouldn't change the targets and we shouldn't change the indicators, but what we should do is to calibrate better what the means in order to attain those and accomplish those goals and indicators in a shorter period of time, and to know exactly what happened. For instance, if we're speaking about poverty, then what are the causes, what are the populations, what conditions got aggravated inside the households and not only in territorial terms. So to just know better what happened in order to recalibrate. And I just wanted to say, it has nothing to do with the question, but I'm sorry about that. But I just wanted to say that because we're here, I believe that the United Nations should do put a greater effort in terms of evaluation when it comes to SDGs. I think you have to set your attention more in terms of evaluation. And for this, for example, holding ex-ante evaluations in order to inform better some of the policy choices or some of the targets that are going to be part of the evaluation processes later on, or this thinking about new policy that is going to be put into place to recover better and to have a resilient growth afterwards. Well, those should be designed starting from and taking advantage of indicators and goals of Agenda 2030 and also with SDGs. And it should be a participatory process. I agree with Sami when he said that it should be a participatory process, because engagement from the very early stages is what guarantees the use of evaluations in the end, and that these are going to be helpful in order to attain the results they were thought about, those policy interventions. And I also believe that training actors and stakeholders is very, very important. And with the question about information, those systems of information are very, very important in order to have the right evaluability conditions, in order to have better evaluation processes. Information is key so that we have strong evaluation processes and also strong recommendations in the end. So anything that we could do as thinking out of evaluation as a public good, a global public good, for instance, thinking about evaluation in that way, then we should come up together. We should rethink methodological tools and also conceptual tools in order to deal better with complexity and deal better with accelerating those results, not to change the goals, but to accelerate the process of attaining those goals in a shorter time, and thinking about specific populations and how does that come up to life when we think about territory, for example, subnational territories that have suffered more than the national processes. And this is what we think. And the way to get there, and this is why we're very thankful with DEVAL and international cooperation, is together innovating practices and methodologies of evaluation, and in order to address better complex processes. I think synergies between donors, institutional governments, stakeholders, civil society is what is going to help us move forward and enable better global evaluation culture on SDGs. I'm sorry to have taken that time, but I just wanted to say.
I think you're not at all. I think what you were, you've raised brilliant ideas, but I want to pick up on one of those ideas that I found very relevant and worth to be explored further, and probably call upon all partners to think about it, is the addressing evaluation as a global public good. This is very pertinent, and it's a concept that probably would be worth exploring further and further. And for what we're doing so far with those sorts and series of webinars and sharing and the learnings, it's basically considering evaluation as a public good in every single country, trying to synthesize and get the juice out of them, and throw it in the wild, in the public, but probably we need to make it more systematic and to institutionalize it better. Again, thank you so much, and I'm conscious of the time. I want to call upon my colleague Stefano, but before that, there is a question by Gordon Wanzare addressed to Nigeria, and I think Bala has almost addressed those questions by saying that the country-led evaluation has been conducted by the government with support from external evaluator and support from UN and bilateral agencies, and the thorough methodology has been there to ensure validation of the process. And I would probably throw the question to Bala separately later on one-to-one, and he will address it bilaterally. Without any further ado, I think Stefano is here. I'm happy to have him with us. Quickly on Stefano, what to say about him? Besides being a friend and a colleague, we've been together in this partnership for quite some time, probably 5 years, isn't it, Stefano? Stefano is currently the head of monitoring and evaluation and learning at IIED. Since 2016, has been leading the production of series of publication on the evaluation of the SDGs, resulted in 14 knowledge products developed in collaboration with the SDGs, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland, UNICEF, IAG, World Bank, among other partners, UN Women and developed partners, among other. I don't want to dwell too much on his CV. I mean, I would throw the ball immediately on his court and ask him to provide us with his perspective and the synthesis of the discussion of today. Stefano.
Hi, everybody, honorable colleagues and attendees. I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I would like to thank all the partners and all the guest speakers for very, very interesting contribution and a very interesting conversation so far, which in my view has been very interesting because it's very much based on practice. And I think that's the interesting element of this discussion is we are not actually talking about theory here. We're not talking about how we should do SDG evaluation from an office in London or in New York. We are actually talking about the evaluation that was conducted in Nigeria, that was conducted in Helsinki, that was conducted in Costa Rica. So we are actually talking about 3 different parts of the world, 3 different ways of doing evaluation. And I think, so my role today is just to pull out some key takeaways that I've taken from this discussion, and also from all the interaction I had with the colleagues that have presented here today. And I think the very first point, a common point emerging from all these presentation is that there isn't a ready-made recipe for conducting an SDG evaluation. There isn't. I mean, as for today, it's very much up to each country to decide if and how to conduct such exercise. As we know, and as it's been stressed by the panelists, conducting an evaluation as part of the follow-up review process is a voluntary process. And this by itself can be a challenge because the exercise can become very broad, unfocused, or it can simply be a way to cherry pick the goals to be evaluated for political purposes. However, what emerged today from the discussion today is that the real case examples, so the 3 evaluations that have happened, have been more opportunities. So we heard about challenges. I think Donna Pilar has explained very well that the thematic evaluation was the first of its kind, and therefore, as such, it was difficult to define the scope at the beginning. But at the same time, we heard much more about the opportunities that these exercises have created. And I think I would like to actually refer to one of the key points shared by the Minister, Donna Pilar, that evaluation can play a key role in answering key questions such as what are the priorities that are going to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I think this is key, of course. Acceleration of development is very much needed, is very much the focus of the agenda because of the condition in which our world is at the moment. And evaluation can play a key role. But how can this be done? We have heard from Finland 3 different ways. First of all, of course, well, what we've heard from our presentation is that the evaluation can play a key role in informing policies, and the policies can be informed in different ways. In Finland, for example, we have heard that the participatory development process element, the approach chosen by the evaluation, was actually key to raise some difficult questions to the different ministries. And in some words, the need to explain to someone else how each ministry supported Agenda 2030 was in itself a very important question to be answered, and actually was in itself something which had an impact. Again, another point from Finland, the parliamentary elections, the evaluation was an opportunity to engage with the parliament, to have those parliamentary discussions. And again, knowing about Finland, that doesn't happen just by default, but actually it happened because the evaluation was very carefully planned in a participatory way, and actually they thought about engaging the parliament in advance. And then the use of evaluation, your findings by the government. Now, as Sami said, again, in Finland, it's difficult to say whether the evaluation has influenced the government plans or not. We'll probably never come to that, to figure that out. But for sure, it's interesting to note that actually the new government plan for Finland is very much aligned with Agenda 2030. And again, very interesting findings from Nigeria, very much related to that point. So the evaluation can be used to influence the findings along the way. In fact, in Finland, in Nigeria, we don't have yet the final reports. The evaluation are still ongoing, but actually they're already feeding back the findings into the political process, and some are already taken into consideration. I think that the point made by Bala around health and the challenge ahead, that actually even spending all the national budget, Nigeria could risk not to meet the SDG goals, and therefore the need to address some urgent issues. The fact that they have this finding now, it's very much an opportunity to address those challenges. And again, the very strong linkages in Costa Rica with the ministry, and the fact that there is actually a very strong evaluation unit in Costa Rica, and already, the embedded a culture, an evaluative culture in Costa Rica to respond to recommendation, that was, of course, very helpful as well to feed back into policies. So there are also other benefits that we have heard, and these are around maybe more specific points, and actually benefits that can be, I would say, opportunities, but that can only be exploited if we work together on them. So, for example, we need new methodologies to address complexity. Conducting thematic SDG evaluation is not easy. That's what we heard from all the 3 presentations. And what we need is actually to join and to learn, to use Dr. Bala's words, we need to learn as we go along, all together. So we all struggle when it comes to evaluate the interconnectedness of the different goals, of the different dimensions of sustainable development. But then if we share practices, if we create a community of practice, we can actually learn from each other's experience, which is very much what we are doing today. Another interesting point, very interesting point, is about using evaluation as an opportunity to boost evaluative capacities in different countries. This was a point made strongly by both Donna Pilar and Dr. Bala. In both cases, we saw that this was very much seen as an opportunity to improve monitoring, evaluation, and learning capacities in both countries. And for example, the fact that in Nigeria is committed to present every 2 years to their voluntary national review is a great opportunity to really increment the capacities to produce evidence which is useful for policy making. And I would like to finish on the opportunities where, and the benefits, talking about the engagement of stakeholders. I think this was something which emerged very strongly from across all three presentations, the need to establish from the outset participatory processes to engage ministries, to engage different sectors of societies, and to actually have the difficult conversation, to negotiate different value propositions. I think it was a very strong call made by all three cases. So to end, lessons learned. I very much like the point made by Anu and Sami. Participatory and developmental evaluation is still going to be the cornerstone of the next evaluation in Finland. So the process is even more important than the findings. We're not here just to produce evidence. We are here actually to talk about evidence, to discuss evidence, and to come up with, to use evidence for negotiating solutions that can address priorities. And we can do that only if we have strong engagement through participatory evaluations. And I think, I would like to end with the call for the public good. I very much endorse, of course, this point. I would also like, though, to make a personal remark. A public good by itself actually is not paid by anyone. There is a risk that, if we don't invest all together on a public good, nobody is going to pay for it, and therefore we're never going to produce any public good. So this means that we're all very much, and investing doesn't just mean money. It means time, it means resources, it means conceptual thinking. It means a lot of things. But I think, one of the successes of this initiative, together with the partners that started in 2015, has been that all of us, we've always put, all, and by that I mean by and large, all the partners that have contributed have always put their own time, effort, and money and resources to actually make this happen. And I think, the more we grow this community, and the more we will be able to advance evaluation as a public good. Thanks. So I think I would like now to hand the floor to my colleague, Dennis Jomit. Can I have the screen? And as you can see, Dennis is going to give the closing remarks for this event. He is the director of the evaluation office, a senior evaluation specialist and OIC director evaluation office, UNICEF. He has more than 22 years of experience in the fields of program evaluation, performance measurement, and performance audit. He is currently the senior evaluation specialist and the OIC director of the UNICEF evaluation office. And in the past, he has been the chief and field coordination of UNICEF Nigeria. So Dennis has worked for a number of organizations, from the Canadian federal organizations to WASH maternal, which includes the Office of the Auditor General. And he has got a wealth of expertise in many different sectors. Dennis has contributed to and authored several international publications and reports, which are focused on evaluation capacity, impact evaluation, and related subjects. So Dennis is very much an expert, an evaluator, which has worked on both sides, from the commissioner and the independent evaluation side. And I really look forward to hearing his closing remarks for this event.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Stefano and Kassem for the chairing and colleague. I will, I don't know, I have not reviewed the latest. I have so many titles there, but it's simple and that I'm an evaluation specialist for the evaluation office. And yes, I'm playing the role of OIC director. So right now, but the director is with us today. So thank you, colleague and distinguished panelists and participant of this important activities, and I would like you to thank you for your participation. I've learned today again about the rich experience of the different countries that were sharing today with us, from Costa Rica, Finland, and Nigeria, for which I know well as well. I've spent several years working with colleague there and Dr. Zachary Lawal. So I would also like to introduce you and take this opportunity to introduce you the newly appointed director of the Evaluation Office, Mr. Robert McCall, who is with us today, and he has been recently appointed. Rob is currently Chief of Evaluation Officer at the WHO, and will be officially joining the Evaluation Office in his capacity of director in the next few months, hopefully, and inshallah. So Rob brings a wealth of knowledge and experience with respect of evaluation as it relates to SDGs. Rob has worked quite a bit on SDGs, first in overseeing the evaluability assessment and formative evaluation of the UN Secretariat contribution to the SDG, while serving as a chief of section in the inspection and evaluation division of the United Nations OIOS. Then as a manager of a 12-member evaluation coalition that undertook a joint evaluability assessment of the Global Action Plan on SDG number 3. So I'm sure he will be sharing his perspective on the issue we've talked today and more in the coming months to come. Many or most might already know Rob, and he's just back from leave. So I will share the UNICEF closing remark that we have put together, if you want. As of today, and as a result of the COVID-19, extreme poverty rose globally in 2020 for the first time in over 20 years. More than 100 million additional people are living in poverty because of the pandemic, with the total expected to rise about 150 million by the end of 2021, which among 82 million are children. The COVID pandemic has also put an unprecedented economic, social, political strain on all of us. In their effort to manage the various consequences of the pandemic, countries need to adjust their plan, their policies, and programs to remain on track and to accelerate the achievement toward the SDGs. Evaluation, especially country-led evaluation, play a key role in this scenario in informing the decision and policies and providing the timely evidence and accountability and learning that is necessary to overcome the challenge that were raised and shared today by the many participants and panelists, and to bring us back on track, and not only on track, but to accelerate or support the development partner to the SDGs. As we see it, SDG 17 that relate to partnership is extended to the evaluation community at all levels, global, regional, country, local level, and partnership will be key in moving forward. Partnership to undertake joint evaluation work, and partnership to build evaluation capacity that is necessary and needed to undertake such work at the country level. In keeping with the urgency of the moment, such partnership will be required to think globally and creatively about a way of working together and go across functional silos in order to rise to the occasion that is presented to us. Can we at the global, regional level collectively support UN country team and their partner to build their capacity for robust evaluation of the SDG? For example, whether through VNR, whether SDG related evaluability assessment and formative evaluation, or different type of evaluation at the country level that are necessary. And might we in the UN system even think about crossing borders even further by directly coordinating and collaborating with SRI, the Supreme Audit Institution, the Inspector General Office, and National Evaluation Office, VOP, and other partner, traditional and non-traditional partner, that to overcome the challenge that were raised and to address the evaluation effort. How can we better address some of the barrier and question raised today by the panelists, especially as they often associate with the production, as rightly pointed out, as the production of a public good, this challenge, and also better connect maybe the evaluation function with another important function, which is the government function, the management function, for which monitoring and data are also belong, in order to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. So we don't have the answer to this, but we pose this question to think about it in the times to come. Whichever direction we go, and for us, the bottom line is that evidence matter, and evidence and partnership matter now more than ever. The Decade of Action is a beacon for us to work together and do whatever it takes to bring the power of evidence and build a future of our children and of the planet, the blue model. UNICEF look forward in partnering with you all in this regard. Before closing as well, I would like to remind all colleagues of the event Friday, the other event Friday, Evaluation, the Missing Piece of the Jigsaw at New York time, 1 p.m. So I just want to remind you all. And again, I would like to thank you all the panelists and partner to join UNICEF in this event, and also again to welcome our director Robert McCount. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. I think thank you so much. I think with this closing remark, it's a call for to adjourn the meeting. It was a pleasure having you all. Thank you so much, Donna Pilar. Thank you so much, Anu. Probably Anu, you have something to add. Dirk, Ada, Thomas, Stefano, Jörg, everyone. Final words, Anu?
Thank you, Kassem, and thank you for all for your active participating. It was really great seeing so many of you today. And unfortunately, time is short and we have to rush to the next session, but all the best for you and hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Muchas gracias. Ciao.
Muchas gracias.